Anita Wright made a mistake that night. She didn't know it yet. Couldn't know. When she handed her last $20 to a trembling old woman buying soup. But within 48 hours, her entire life would be owned by the most dangerous family in Portland. And the worst part? She'd have no choice but to stay. Because when you show kindness to the wrong person, you don't just owe them a debt, you become the debt. And debts, in this city, are paid in blood. Anita's fingers trembled as she counted the pills in the orange prescription bottle. 3 left. Her grandmother needed 2 a day just to keep breathing without pain. Tomorrow there would be nothing. From the bedroom, a wet cough shattered the silence, then another, then wheezing, that horrible rattling sound that meant her grandmother couldn't breathe lying down. Anita rushed in. Her grandmother was sitting upright, clutching the headboard, face gray, lips tinged blue. The oxygen tube had slipped from her nose. "Grandma, breathe. Just breathe." Her hands shook as she replaced the tube and turned the concentrator to max. Slowly, the color crept back into the old woman's face, the wheezing easing to a tired rasp. "I'm okay, baby," her grandmother whispered. "Just a bad spell." Anita pressed her forehead to the woman's shoulder, swallowing tears. The bad spells were coming closer together now. She looked at the empty pill bottle on the nightstand and the eviction notice taped crooked on the wall. "Get some sleep," her grandmother murmured, trying to hum an old gospel tune and breaking into a cough halfway through. "I will," Anita lied. The fluorescent lights in the convenience store buzzed like dying insects. 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, the hour when the city felt abandoned. The coolers hummed, the floor tiles were scuffed, and Anita stood behind the counter counting the crumpled bills in her wallet. $17. Not enough for rent, not enough for medicine, barely enough to keep the lights on. The door chimed. An elderly woman shuffled inside, moving like each step hurt. A rust-colored cardigan hung loose from her shoulders, and silver hair spilled from a lopsided bun. Her hands shook as she reached for a basket. Anita watched her move slowly through the aisles, selecting 2 cans of the cheapest soup and cradling them against her chest. Up close at the counter, the woman's face was pale and deeply lined, but her dark eyes were sharp. Almost too sharp for someone who looked that fragile. "Just these, please," the woman said. Her accent was Korean, soft around the edges. $3.42, Anita said. The woman slid a worn debit card through the reader. Declined. She tried again. Declined. Color rose in her cheeks. Her fingers shook harder. I'm sorry," she whispered. "I thought I haven't eaten in 2 days." The sentence landed like a stone in Anita's chest. She glanced at the 2 cans, at the card, at her own wallet lying open on the counter. $17. Don't do it, she thought. You can't afford this. Her hand was already reaching. She pulled out a 20, her last, and popped open the till. "It's okay, I've got it." The old woman's eyes widened. "No, I can't. It's fine." Anita managed a tired smile. "Consider it a neighbor discount." The woman just stared at her for a long, unsettling second, then took the bagged soup. Her cold, papery fingers brushed Anita's hand. "You're a good girl," she said softly, locking eyes with her. Something in her tone was heavier than gratitude. A judgment. A verdict. The woman turned and shuffled toward the door. That's when Anita saw him. A man stood just inside the entrance, half in shadow. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a perfectly cut black suit that didn't belong in this run-down store. A gold chain glinted at his throat, and his dark hair was slicked back. He wasn't browsing, he was watching. For a moment his gaze met hers, cool, assessing, unreadable. Then he turned and followed the old woman out into the night. The door chimed again. Ray, a wiry regular with nicotine-yellowed fingers, hurried in. He usually joked his way to the cigarette rack, but tonight his eyes were wide and jittery. "Hey, Ray," Anita said, still rattled. He didn't answer. He watched the door swing shut behind the old woman, then leaned across the counter, breath sour and voice shaky. "You know who that was?" "Who?" "That old lady you just helped." Anita shook her head. He swallowed. "You don't want to know." "Ray," her patience snapped a little. "You're freaking me out. Who is she?" He glanced at the cameras, then lowered his voice to a rasp. "You just fed the woman who buries people who cross her." Ice slid down Anita's spine. "What are you talking about?" Ray backed away, already retreating. "Forget I said anything." He snatched his cigarettes from the rack, tossed a wrinkled bill on the counter, and bolted. Anita stood alone under the buzzing lights, heart racing. She checked the security monitor. Empty parking lot. No old woman. No man in the suit. She locked the store 20 minutes later, hands still shaking. The air outside was biting, exhaust and damp asphalt filling her nose as she crossed to her rusted car under a broken streetlight. As she drove home, she couldn't shake the sound of the woman's voice. "You're a good girl," it rang in her head like a promise or a threat. At home, her grandmother was finally sleeping without the awful rattle. Anita tipped the eviction notice crooked on the fridge back to straight with a bitter little laugh. What Anita didn't know was that, for people like the woman she'd just helped, kindness was never free. It was an opening. A test. And Anita had just passed it. The bathroom light was as harsh as the one at the store. Anita opened the medicine cabinet out of habit, ready to stare at the same almost empty bottle, and froze. The bottle was full. Not the cheap generic they'd been scraping by with. The expensive brand. 30 pills, sealed, with her grandmother's name on the label and the correct dosage. Her skin prickled. She hadn't gone to any pharmacy. "Baby, is that you?" came the tired voice from the bedroom. "Yeah, Grandma." Anita shoved the bottle back. "Just checking something." "You didn't have to buy more already," the old woman rasped. "You rob a bank?" Anita forced out a weak laugh. Something like that. She checked every window and lock twice before going to bed. Nothing looked disturbed, but someone had been in here. Close enough to touch the toothbrushes, the old pictures on the wall, close enough to watch her grandmother sleep. She woke to pounding on the door at 6 a.m. Her heart hammered. Nobody knocked this early with good news. She peered through the peephole. Empty hallway. She cracked the door. A black leather briefcase sat neatly on the doormat like a gift. Down on the street, the tail lights of a black SUV were already disappearing around the corner. Her mouth went dry. She dragged the briefcase inside and snapped it open. Stacks of $100 bills stared back at her. The smell of paper and ink and something like metal rushed out. She counted with numb fingers until she lost track, then counted again. $50,000. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello? You helped my mother." The man's voice was smooth, controlled, like still water over something deep. Anita's stomach knotted. "Who is this?" "You'll find out soon enough. The medicine is yours. The money is yours. You earned it." "I don't want it. Take it back." A brief pause, like amusement. "You showed her kindness when no one else would. That means something to us." "I don't understand what's happening." "You will." The line went dead. Anita stood in her tiny living room, breathing hard, the phone still at her ear. The briefcase sat open, stupidly bright in the morning light. She checked the windows again. Behind the curtains, everything looked normal, but she felt exposed, as if eyes were on her from every angle. That night she slept with the lights on, the briefcase pushed under the bed. A kitchen knife laid on the nightstand. Every creak of the building made her jolt upright. By the next evening, exhaustion clung to her like a second skin. She dragged herself home after a late shift, fumbling the key in the lock. The door swung open easily. Too easily. The lights were on. A man sat on her couch. The black suit. The gold chain. The same unreadable eyes from the doorway of the store. Every instinct screamed. Anita's fingers flew for her phone. "Relax," he said calmly, not bothering to stand. "If I wanted you dead, we wouldn't be talking." She pressed her back to the door anyway, heart pounding loud enough to drown out rational thought. "Get out. I'll call the cops." "No, you won't." He leaned forward, forearms on his knees, gaze locked on her. Up close, his features were clean and sharp, a faint scar cutting through his left eyebrow. "My name is Seo Jun," she swallowed. "What do you want?" "I work for my mother. You met her 2 nights ago." The old woman's face flashed in Anita's mind, those sharp eyes in the frail body. "The soup," she whispered. "The soup," he agreed. "She liked you." "That explains the money? The medicine?" He watched her for a beat. "Part of it." He pulled a folded newspaper clipping from his jacket and tossed it onto the coffee table. With shaking hands, Anita picked it up. The headline screamed, "West Coast Mother Still at Large. Authorities Suspect Mastermind Behind Disappearances." The accompanying photo was little more than a dark silhouette of an older woman stepping into a car. "That's her?" Anita asked. "That's what they think they know," Seo Jun said. "My mother doesn't like cameras." The print blurred. She's some kind of crime boss?" He almost smiled. "She's the crime boss." He leaned back, voice turning conversational in a way that made it worse. "My mother doesn't forgive disrespect, ever. 20 years she's run this coast. You know how many people have tried to take her down?" Anita said nothing. 37. His eyes held hers. "Know how many succeeded?" Silence stretched. "None." Her legs wobbled. She dropped into the chair opposite him, because standing felt impossible. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you helped her," he said simply. "And she intends to help you." "I don't want her help. Take the money back. Take the pills. I just want my life back." "Too late for that." He slid his phone across the table. On the screen were photos. Her grandmother outside the dialysis center. In the hospital parking lot. A shot through the window of their old apartment. The old woman asleep in bed. Anita's stomach lurched. "Where did you get these?" "We keep track of people who matter," he said. "You can say no to us, Anita. Walk away. Pretend this never happened." His eyes hardened. They can't. You're threatening my grandmother? I'm explaining reality. Tears stung. What do you want from me? Loyalty, he said. Small things at first, deliveries, errands. You don't ask what's in the box, you don't open the envelope. You take it from point A to point B. You keep the money. Your grandmother keeps breathing. And if I say no? He didn't bother answering. Anita stared at the photos again. Her grandmother, smiling at some nurse, oblivious. I'm not a criminal, she whispered. Neither was my mother, he said quietly, until the world made her one. He stood, buttoning his jacket with brisk efficiency. You have until tomorrow to decide, but understand my mother doesn't offer twice. At the door he paused. She sees something in you. I don't know what, but she's never wrong about people. The door clicked shut behind him. Alone with the silence and the glow of the phone screen, Anita understood that there were decisions you made, and decisions that made you. This felt like the second kind. The first job seemed simple. A text from an unknown number, an address in the industrial district, a time, and bring the car. A package was waiting on her passenger seat when she came down that morning, wrapped in brown paper. No label, no note. It was about the size of a shoebox, light in her hands, like it might be empty. Her palms were slick on the steering wheel as she followed her map through streets that smelled of oil and cold metal. The warehouse lot was mostly empty, the air thick with the tang of diesel and the distant thud of machinery. One car waited, a dark sedan. A man stepped out. Mid-40s maybe, suit and tie. Watch that probably cost more than Anita made in a month. No greeting, no smile. He held out his hands. She passed him the package and got an envelope in return. Their fingers didn't quite touch. Then he turned away, already gone. In her car, Anita opened the envelope. $5,000. Crisp bills, slick and unreal in her hands. Her heart pounded. She could walk away now, she told herself. Give it back. Throw the phone away. Catch a bus to another state. She drove home instead. Slid most of the money under her mattress. Handed her grandmother a new blanket on the way to bed and smiled when the old woman asked, "You hit the lottery, baby?" The second job was worse. An upscale restaurant that smelled of wine and butter and money. The man waiting at the bar looked like every predator she'd ever imagined. Hair silvered just enough to suggest power, smile too wide, eyes sliding over her like she was something on the menu. "You're new," he said, taking the small package from her hand. His thumb stroked the back of her fingers just long enough to make her skin crawl. "Tell Seo Yeon she has excellent taste." "I'm just the messenger," she muttered, snatching her hand back. He laughed, low and unpleasant. "For now." Anita made it out the back door before her stomach rebelled. She doubled over in the alley, the smell of rotting food and stale beer mixing with bile. The third package felt heavier. She sat in her car outside the pickup address, staring at it. The brown paper was neat, the tape perfect. Her reflection in the windshield looked like someone else. Dark circles, jaw clenched. Just deliver it. Don't think, don't look. Her fingers were already tearing the paper. Inside were bricks of white powder, tightly wrapped in plastic. There was no pretending she didn't know what it was. No pretending it was harmless. She could have thrown it away, driven straight to the cops. Instead, she rewrapped it, carefully, like she hadn't seen. Drove to the half-finished construction site on the outskirts of town. The man waiting for her there was one she recognized from the news broadcast playing above the pumps at the gas station. Wanted in connection with trafficking. Suspected in 12 disappearances. "Right on time," he said, taking the package. "Tell the mother we're honored." Her mouth was so dry she couldn't answer. 2 blocks away, she had to pull over. She stumbled out, knees hitting asphalt, and vomited until there was nothing left. Her throat burned. The taste of acid and shame lingered. A sedan's engine idled nearby. "You're learning," a familiar voice said. Anita wiped her mouth with the back of her shaking hand and looked up. Seo Yeon was standing beside her, leaning lightly on a cane. The night air carried the smell of exhaust and something sweeter. Jasmine from a nearby yard, oddly out of place. "I opened it," Anita choked. "I knew what it was. I still gave it to him." Seo Yeon extended a folded white handkerchief. "It gets easier." "I don't want it to get easier." The words tore out of her. "I don't want to be like you." The old woman's eyes softened, the hard shine dimming for a breath. "Not yet." "Why me?" Anita asked, voice raw. "You could have used anyone. Why pull me into this?" A shadow of grief crossed Seo Yeon's face. Her fingers, cold and light, brushed Anita's cheek. "Because you remind me of someone I lost," she said. "Get some rest." "Tomorrow will be harder." She stepped back into the waiting car and was gone, leaving Anita kneeling on the pavement, the city's distant sirens wailing like something inside her. 2 weeks blurred into a series of addresses and packages, of doors opened and envelopes exchanged. Anita stopped turning on the news. She didn't want to see any more faces she recognized. She told herself it was just until she had enough to disappear. Just until her grandmother was safe. Just until. But the guilt piled up faster than the cash. Each delivery felt heavier than the last, like she was carrying pieces of herself away and leaving them in strangers' hands. One evening, the pressure became too much. She couldn't breathe in the safe house, couldn't stand the clean silence and the perfectly folded blanket so. She told Seo Jun's men she was going for a walk and called a ride-share instead, directing it to the address she'd memorized from the clippings and whispers. High above the city, behind tall gates and a winding drive, sat a house of glass and stone and manicured hedges. The guards at the entrance didn't raise their weapons when she gave her name. They just checked a list, then waved her through. She found Seo Yeon in the garden behind the house, sprinkling seed from a small tin into her palm. Birds fluttered down, landing without fear on her wrist, her shoulder. The air smelled of jasmine and damp earth, a strange mix of beauty and rot. "Why me?" Anita's voice shredded the quiet. Seo Yeon didn't turn. "You know why?" "No," Anita said, stepping closer, her hands curled into fists. "You didn't just wander into my store by accident. You knew who I was before I ever saw you. You knew about my grandmother, about everything." "Yes." The simple admission knocked the breath out of her. "Then why?" Anita demanded. "Why not just kill me and be done with it? Why all this?" Seo Yeon let the last of the seed fall. The bird scattered in a sudden burst of wings. She walked slowly to a stone bench and sat, gesturing for Anita to do the same. "Sit," she said. It wasn't a request. Anita sat, because some part of her already understood that defiance here had limits. The old woman reached into her coat and pulled out a photograph, worn at the edges. She slid it across the bench. A young woman looked up at Anita from the glossy surface. Early 20s, laughing, her hair long and dark, caught mid-turn like someone had called her name. The joy in her face was almost painful. "She looks like—" Anita's voice faltered. "You," Seo Yeon finished quietly. Her name was Mai Sun, my daughter. What happened to her? Seo Yeon's jaw clenched, the veneer of control cracking just enough to show the hurt beneath. 15 years ago, she was studying medicine. She wanted to fix what the world broke. Her eyes went far away. One night she walked home from the library. Wrong street, wrong time. Men in a car drove by and opened fire on a boy they were after. She was just there. Anita's throat tightened. She died in the street, Seo Yeon said. The ambulance came too late. The police wrote it up as collateral damage. Her lip curled. Another dead immigrant girl. Not worth their time. I'm so sorry, Anita whispered. Useless words that hung in the air and went nowhere. I hunted the man who pulled the trigger, Seo Yeon continued. Took me 3 years. The police lost interest in a week. I didn't. She pulled out another photo. A man this time. Older. Face hard. Eyes empty. Something about the angle of his jaw felt like a memory Anita had never fully formed. His name was Marcus Wright. The world dipped. That was my husband's name, Anita said slowly. My father. He left when I was 3. Seo Yeon's gaze was unblinking. He was a low-level enforcer for a gang that thought my territory was theirs. He killed my daughter. I found him. I made him understand what he'd taken. Then I buried him where no one would ever dig him up. Anita's hands shook so badly the photo slipped from her fingers. No. Yes, Seo Yeon said. You're lying. The old woman pulled one last picture from her coat. Older, edges yellowed. A younger version of Anita's mother, holding a baby. A man's arm wrapped around them both. The man from the crime photo, smiling down at the baby with a possessive pride. Anita stared, the edges of her vision going white. That's my mom, she whispered. That's me. And that, Seo Yeon said, tapping the man's face, is Marcus Wright. Anita lurched to her feet, stumbling back. The garden blurred around her, the neat hedges and perfect flowers twisting like a bad dream. You knew, she said. You knew who I was the second you saw me. Yes. Then why didn't you kill me? Seo Yeon's composure frayed. Her voice softened to something fragile. Because I wanted to, she said. I told myself I would. I told myself you were his blood, his legacy, and I would break you to hurt him again. She looked down at her weathered hands. But then you handed me those cans. Gave me your last dollar without hesitation. After everything this city did to me, you were the first person in years who helped a stranger for nothing. She inhaled slowly. After Mi-sun died, I stopped believing in people. I spent years punishing them, everyone who looked away when she was bleeding in that street. But I needed to know if there was anyone left worth saving, so I tested them. I walked into stores all over this city, card declining, begging for help. Dozens of people, hundreds. Her voice roughened. They all turned me away. Every single one. Until you. Anita sank back onto the bench as if her knees had given out. Tears blurred the photographs. You used me, she said. Yes. You manipulated everything. Yes. Then what am I to you? Her voice broke. A replacement? A way to make yourself feel better? Seo Yeon's hand came up, cupping Anita's face with unexpected gentleness. Her fingers were cool, faintly trembling. You are the daughter I never got to raise, she said. Anita jerked away as if burned. I can't do this. I can't be part of this, You already are. Then I'll leave. Anita stood, backing away. I'll take my grandmother and disappear. Where? Seo Yeon asked quietly. With what money? With what protection? You really think the men you've delivered for will let you walk away? You think Choi Min-ho won't notice when the mother's new messenger vanishes? I'll go to the police. And tell them what? That you've been delivering packages for the woman they've failed to arrest for 20 years? The truth of it crashed over her. She was trapped, and they both knew it. I hate you, Anita whispered. I know, Seo Yeon said. I should turn you in. You won't, the old woman replied, and there was no arrogance in it, just weary certainty. Because you need me, and because, whether you admit it or not, you understand me more than you wish you did. Anita left the garden with her world cracked open, and no idea how to put it back together. She didn't get far before the war came to her door. The safe house was quiet that evening, a kind of quiet that felt wrong. Anita sat at the small kitchen table, reading a letter from her grandmother written in shaky loops. You always were my brave girl, it said. Don't let the world harden you. The window shattered before she finished the line. Gunfire ripped through the apartment. The sound was so loud it became a physical thing, slamming into her chest. Glass exploded into the room in glittering shards, stinging her arms and face. Anita dropped to the floor, covering her head as splinters and dust rained down. The air filled with the smell of plaster and cordite, thick and metallic. Get her! Someone shouted from the hall, voice muffled by ringing in her ears. Footsteps thundered closer. Anita! Seo Jun's voice cut through the chaos. A second later, he was beside her, grabbing her wrist with a grip like iron. He hauled her up, half dragging her toward the back of the apartment as more shots chewed through the walls. They stumbled down the basement stairs, her bare feet slipping on concrete. She felt something sharp slice her heel, but there was no time to look. He shoved her behind a heavy workbench. Don't move, he snapped, then turned and charged back up the stairs, gun already in his hand. The sounds above her were a nightmare, shouts in Korean, the crack of gunfire, the crash of furniture. Once, something heavy hit the floor hard enough to shake dust from the ceiling. Anita huddled in the corner, hands over her ears, tasting copper and bile. Her heart hammered so fast it hurt. The ringing in her ears turned everything into a dull echo. Then, finally, silence. Footsteps on the stairs again. Slow this time. Each creak stretched her nerves thinner. Seo Jun appeared, breathing hard, shirt spattered with blood that wasn't his. His face was calm, in a way that made her stomach turn. You hurt? He asked. She shook her head, though her heel throbbed and her hands shook so violently she could barely hold herself upright. Good. He tossed a bloodied towel aside and wiped his hands on a clean one. Who were they? Anita managed. Her voice sounded small in the empty space. Choi Min-ho's people. He spoke the name like it tasted bad. He's been trying to carve pieces out of my mother's territory for years. Your leverage now. A way to get her attention. Anita stared at him. What have you done to my life? I saved it. You destroyed it. He stepped closer, eyes dark. You think you were safe before? Counting pennies in a dying store while your grandmother suffocated because you couldn't afford her medicine? That was just a slower death. She shook her head, tears spilling over. At least it was mine. He grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. There was no softness in his grip, but no cruelty either. Just urgency. You think leaving protects you? Protects her? If I'm not here, they have no reason to go after her, Anita said, clinging to the thought like a life raft. Anita. He pulled his phone from his pocket and tapped a few times, then held the screen out. Choi's men already know where she is. They've been watching her for 3 days. On the screen was a grainy photo, time-stamped 20 minutes earlier. Her grandmother, in her care facility bed, asleep. The window in the background was cracked open, curtains shifting slightly as if someone were just out of frame. You leaving doesn't save her, Seo-jun said quietly. It just means she dies alone. Her knees buckled. She pressed a hand against the cold concrete wall to keep herself from sliding down it. What do you want me to do? Stay, he said. Let us move you where we can protect you. Let us put our people on her. You walk out now, I can't do anything for either of you. That's not a choice, she whispered. No, he agreed. It's not. The basement suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. Somewhere above them lay broken glass and bodies. Somewhere across town, her grandmother slept under the watch of men who didn't even know they were being watched in turn. There were decisions you made, and decisions you had to live with. This one felt like both. I'll stay, Anita said. The words tasted like surrender. Seo-jun nodded once. Then get your shoes. We're not staying here another minute. The new safe house was different. Reinforced doors, cameras in the corners, little red lights blinking. Guards in plain clothes who never really looked away. Anita felt less like a guest, and more like a very valuable object being stored. She barely slept. When she did, she dreamed of glass exploding, and her grandmother's hand slipping out of hers. 3 days later, Seo-jun told her she could see her grandmother. One visit. Carefully controlled. The care facility smelled of antiseptic and something softer. Lavender lotion and old linen. Machines beeped steadily in the quiet ward. Her grandmother lay in a narrow bed, thinner than Anita remembered. Cheeks hollow. Oxygen tube hissing softly. Her eyes brightened when Anita stepped in. There's my girl, she murmured. Anita sat and took her hand. The skin felt like tissue paper, frighteningly light. Hey, Grandma. You look different. The old woman squinted up at her. Harder, like you've been wrestling with the devil. Anita managed a shaky laugh. Something like that. Are you in trouble? No. The lie came too fast. I'm safe now, I promise. Her grandmother's fingers tightened around hers with surprising strength. You're lying. I can see it in your eyes, baby. Tears burned. Whatever you're into, her grandmother took a rattling breath. I raised you better than this. Her voice softened, but sharpened at the core. Don't you let anyone take your soul. You hear me? Money comes and goes. People too. But once you let them turn you into something you're not, you can't come back from that. I'm trying, Anita whispered. Then try harder. Her grandmother's gaze held hers, fierce even through the weakness. You're all I got in this world. Don't let them take the part of you that made you stay with a sick old woman instead of running. Anita bent forward, resting her forehead against their joined hands. I love you. I love you more. She left before she broke completely, the sound of the oxygen machine chasing her down the hall like a clock she couldn't stop. That night, she went back to Seo-yeon's estate. The garden was the same. Birds, jasmine, the city's lights winking in the distance, but Anita saw it differently now. Not as a sanctuary, but as the throne room of a quiet tyrant who had wrapped her life in invisible chains. I'll stay, Anita said, standing at the edge of the path. But I need the truth. All of it. No more half-stories. No more tests. Seo Yeon sat on the bench, a small blanket over her knees despite the mild night. She patted the stone beside her. Anita sat. For a long while, they listened to the wind in the hedges. Then Seo Yeon spoke, voice softer than Anita had ever heard it. I didn't save you because you were kind, she said. Kind people die every day, and the world barely blinks. Anita turned to look at her. I saved you, Seo Yeon continued, because you're the daughter I never got to raise. The words hit harder than any threat. Anita's eyes filled. You used me, she said. Yes. You orchestrated everything. You walked into my store. You had my apartment watched. You dangled my grandmother over my head like bait. Yes. How am I supposed to trust you? Seo Yeon's shoulders sagged a fraction. The unshakable matriarch suddenly just an old woman weighed down by ghosts. Maybe you shouldn't, she said. Maybe you never will. But I am the only family you have left beyond that woman in the hospital bed. And you, she swallowed. You are the only family I have left beyond the son I turned into a weapon. Tears spilled freely down Anita's face. I hate you for what you've done to me. I know. But I can't leave. I know. Seo Yeon reached for her hand. Anita almost pulled away. Almost. You are not my daughter by blood, the old woman said. But you are mine now, and I will burn this city to the ground before I let anyone take you from me. Anita looked at their joined hands, the killer's and the clerk's, the world's worst mother, and the girl who kept choosing between the least bad options. I don't know if I'm saved, she whispered, or damned. Perhaps both, Seo Yeon said. Most people worth anything are. The first month after that, Anita cried herself to sleep almost every night. She would close her eyes and see her father's face from the photo, her grandmother's hand reaching for hers. Mi-sun laughing in a world that hadn't yet decided to crush her. The second month, she stopped crying. There wasn't time. Seo Jun trained her, how to read a room before she walked into it, how to hear the lie in a man's voice, how to give orders with a calm that betrayed nothing of the storm inside. She learned about roots and fronts, about which judges looked the other way for the right favor, which cops could be bought and which had to be avoided. By the third month, she stopped feeling much of anything at all. The numbers on the ledgers became abstract. The territory maps and supply chains turned into puzzles she could solve with a detached efficiency that scared her when she thought about it too long. Seo Yeon watched from the edges, sometimes with pride, sometimes with something like regret. But she never stopped pushing, and Anita, whether she admitted it or not, became exactly what they needed her to be. Not a clerk, not a scared girl counting pills in a cramped bathroom, not even a daughter. A successor. 3 months later, the boardroom was ice-cold and silent. 12 men sat around a table of dark, polished stone that reflected the ceiling lights like a calm black lake. The chairs creaked softly as they shifted, expensive leather sighing under expensive suits. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawled in a grid of gold and shadow. The door opened. Every man at the table rose. Seo Yeon entered first, cane tapping a steady rhythm. The years showed in the stiffness of her walk, but no one looking at her would mistake that for weakness. Power hung around her like a second coat. Anita followed one step behind. She wore a tailored black suit that fit like it had been made for her. Because it had. Her hair was slicked back, jaw set, eyes calm. There was no trace of the worn convenience store uniform, no hint of the girl who used to flinch at every sound. Seo Yeon took the head of the table. Anita took the chair to her right. One of the older men, his face a road map of old fights and harder nights, cleared his throat. "With respect, Seo Yeon," he said, voice careful. "Some of us are curious about the girl's place here." "Curious," Seo Yeon repeated, as if tasting the word. "She is new to our world," he said. "Many of us bled for these seats." Seo Yeon's gaze cooled the air 10 degrees. "This is my daughter," she said. "She speaks with my voice and acts with my authority. If you question her, you are questioning me." Silence settled heavy and absolute. The man dropped his eyes first. "Understood." "Good," she said. "Then let's begin." She nodded to Anita. Anita opened the folder in front of her. The paper felt cold and stiff under her fingers. Numbers and names and arrows stared back at her, but they no longer overwhelmed her. They were the shape of her reality now. "Choi Min-ho hit 3 of our shipments last month," she said, her voice steady, carrying easily to every corner of the room. "We're moving the primary route south and shutting down the north docks for now. New suppliers, new drivers. Anyone who keeps dealing with Choi after tonight is no longer one of us." A murmur of assent circled the table. She looked up, meeting each man's eyes in turn. "Any questions?" None of them held her gaze for long. "Good," she said. The meeting rolled on, territories reassigned, debts called in, truces reconsidered. Anita spoke when she needed to, listened when she didn't. Once, she caught Seo Jun watching her from the far end of the table. When their eyes met, he gave the smallest nod, something like approval flickering across his usually impassive face. When the last agenda item was crossed off, the chairs scraped back, and the men filed out one by one. Each stopped by the head of the table to murmur a respectful word to Seo Yeon. More than one inclined his head, briefly, to Anita as well. Seo Jun was the last to leave. "Not bad," he said at the door. "For a clerk?" she asked. There was no heat in it, just a wry acknowledgement of who she had been. "For anyone," he answered. He left them alone in the echoing room. "How do you feel?" Seo Yeon asked after a moment. Anita stared at her reflection in the dark gloss of the table. The woman looking back at her was composed, calculated, unflinching. She barely recognized her. "I don't know," she said honestly. "You will." Later, in the hush of the estate, the past came back in flashes. Yellow store lights, the sound of her grandmother's cough, a crumpled $20 bill sliding across a counter. She remembered the briefcase under her bed, the smell of antiseptic in her grandmother's room, the taste of copper in the air when the windows exploded. She remembered Seo Yeon's fingers on her cheek. The weight of those words. "You are the daughter I never got to raise." She thought kindness was free once. A small light you could toss into the dark without expecting anything in return. She knew better now. Kindness had a price. Every choice did. Anita had paid hers in pieces of her soul, one decision at a time. At the window of Seo Yeon's estate, the city spread out below her like a living thing, breathing, pulsing, full of secrets. The glass was cool under her fingertips. Behind her, in the reflection, Seo Jun stood in the doorway, arms crossed, a silent shadow keeping watch. She didn't turn. She came to this city with nothing, the voice in her head said, narrating, judging, memorializing. Now she owns it. But the question remains. Her own eyes in the glass were unreadable. Not innocent anymore. Not entirely lost either. Something harder. More dangerous durchums, born from all the times the world had forced her to choose between bad and worse. At what cost? The city lights blinked in answer, offering no comfort. Somewhere across town, a grandmother slept under the watchful eye of men who would kill for the young woman at the window. Somewhere underground, a man named Marcus Wright lay in an unmarked grave. Somewhere in a memory, Mi-sun laughed in a sunlit courtyard, alive in a way Anita would never know. The screen went black in her mind's eye. No music, no neat moral, just the low hum of a world where debts were never really paid off, only traded.